Just before we get started today, I have a question. Do you suppose that ever since he started playing Thor in those movies that Chris has become in charge of all hammers and hammer-related activities at the Hemsworth house? Like in my mind, I have this great image of him coming charging out of the utility room with a 5-pound sledge whipping around his head called Hammermere every time somebody reports a squeaky floorboard at his mother's house. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Greetings, everyone. It's your boy Tbearius, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am from the state of Georgia originally, and my mother and father are still together and happily married, and both worked my entire life. And I don't think that it caused me any great psychological damage. Now, my mom and dad got married when my dad was only 18 years old. And it took him a couple of years to kind of get settled in to sort of adult life after that. But he eventually ended up getting a job as a maintenance technician in a plastics manufacturing plant. Now, because of that, there are two really strong memories that I have of my childhood. Number one is that for my entire life, growing up, my dad always smelled a little bit like a plastics manufacturing plant. If you've ever been in one, you know that it's kind of a very unique sort of smell of like melted, burned chemicals. And I recently had the chance to go into a plastics manufacturing shop and got reminded of that smell. And I know that for a lot of people it's a unpleasant smell, but actually to me it's very nostalgic because of course it reminds me of my dad. But the other thing that was always real unique about my dad that I always noticed growing up was that his hands, and that his hands were constantly sort of stained up by grease and oil, and honestly, who knows what kind of chemicals and cleaners he was probably subjected to through the 70s and 80s of. Now, because of kind of that difficulty in raising a family and all that my father and mother experienced, they were very adamant that my sister and I should get educations past high school and be able to get professional jobs where hopefully we would not, sort of be subjected to some of the things that they had to go through. I actually graduated from the Georgia Institute of Technology, go Yellow Jackets, with an electrical engineering degree. And I'm now a design engineer for an automotive parts supplier. And what made me think of this is that the other day I actually spent the entire day checking over an engineering print drawing for one of my team members. And at the end of the day, I looked down at my own hands and they were completely covered in pen ink and highlighter ink from all of the highlighting that I was doing while I was checking the drawings. And as I was sitting there kind of looking at my highlighted up hands and thinking about this, I realized that my father and I sort of represent a little bit of the American dream, if you will, that each generation can kind of move sort of forward. All parents want their children to have it easier and better than they did. And I think that, at least in our case, that was successful. And so the thing that I want to say to everyone is partly about sort of this encouragement to continue to move forward in your life and never give up, and the importance of good education. I do feel that that's very important. And I think that there's a little bit of a idea out there that young professionals such as myself have sort of lost touch with blue collar roots that brought so many of us around. And I think that that's unfair, because I think that a lot of people look at us and think that because we sit in offices and highlight drawings that we basically live in some kind of easy life. And it may be my own self-serving attitude, but I don't feel that that's true. I feel that many of us work very hard and sacrifice a lot, but we just do it in perhaps a different way than other segments of our society. But the other thing is that I think that a lot of young professionals like myself have a little bit of an image that we are, I don't know, somehow less robust and less manly than our fathers were. And I think that those sorts of ideas of what it means to be sort of successful, hardworking, manly in a way, are sort of at the forefront right now in our country. I live in the United States, and it's always kind of a trying time for us because Right now, we're about to elect a new president. I think we're about a week away. And any time that we have any sort of election happening because of the way that our political systems are set up, this whole idea of sort of class warfare in our country sort of gets thrown to the front, where one side of the aisle tries to convince us that this, upper echelon of professional people are not really doing their part and don't really understand what it's like to be in sort of the blue collar base of our country. And the other side tries to convince us all that everyone who works hard and takes their opportunities are able to be successful, and that the people at the bottom aren't trying very hard. And I think that that's sad, because I have noticed in my own sort of life with some of the daily interactions that I have in my own job, that that's an idea that really permeates our society. And it's sad because I don't think that it's true. I think that the idea that some of us have our hands covered in grease and oil and some of us have our hands covered in ink and highlighter, it really shouldn't matter what your hands are covered in. It should be the fact that we all have a job and that we all work hard at that job, and that's actually what makes our country move forward. It's not just the farmers, it's not just the firefighters or the policemen, it's not just the military, it's not just the lawyers, it's not just the politicians, but it's a combination of all of us together. Society functions because somebody is willing to do every important job in that society. And I think that we should learn to respect that about one another a little bit more. And I've been guilty myself of those sorts of attitudes, and I think that most others have. So with that in mind, as we move into this election, I have a few things that I would like to ask everyone to sort of think about and consider, kind of common things that often get said during these elections that I think are a little bit one-sided or biased. The first thing that we always hear constantly is about gun control. There's a segment of our society that believes that some form of guns should be banned or at least very tightly controlled. Then there's the other side of our society that believes that the Second Amendment of the Constitution gives us the absolute right to maintain any armament that is available, basically. Now, I'm not going to attempt to get political or to sway anyone's opinion, but the only thing that I think about when I think about gun control and the Second Amendment is that the right to bear arms covers everything from a stick or a rock up to a nuclear weapon. I think that there are very few people out there who would be comfortable with the idea that any armament in human existence should be available to anyone who can afford to pay for it. So I just ask you all to think about that when you're arguing about an assault weapons ban or whatever. I feel like most of us recognize that there needs to be a limit somewhere, and if we recognize that, then we realize that all we're really doing is just discussing where that line should be drawn. Another thing that I always get kind of tired of hearing, and it was very prominent during the last election when we elected Mr. Obama the second time, we're going to make sure that the cars of the future are made here in America, not in Korea or Japan. Now, as an automotive supplier, I can tell you beyond any shadow of any doubt whatsoever that that is way oversimplified and largely completely not true. And I know why he said it. He said it because it's the belief of a large part of the electorate in our country that Ford vehicle or Chevy vehicle is a 100% American product, whereas a Kia or a Honda or a Hyundai or Subaru, whatever the case may be, is some import car and that it's somehow less American. In fact, Volkswagen, Nissan, Toyota, Honda, Kia, Hyundai, BMW, all of those companies build cars right here in America. There are several foreign automotive factories in Tennessee and Kentucky. There are some in Texas. There are some in Ohio. They're all over the place. There is no real necessary relationship between the badge on that car, be it a Ford, a Chevy, a Honda, Kia, whatever, and where it was manufactured. And that's not even mentioning the design services, because basically every popular car that you see on the street, all of those companies, be they Japanese or Korean or American, all have design studios and design cars in the United States. Most of them are in Michigan. There are some in California, some elsewhere. And the bigger part of this is that I can only speak to the automotive industry because that's what I have direct experience with. But I think that it's true of just about any type of product that you see. Those little labels that you see on products, made in China, made in Bangladesh, made in Pakistan, made in the United States, they're all sort of similarly oversimplifications of that product and where it comes from. Yes, your shirt may be constructed in Bangladesh or in Pakistan or whatever the case may be, but the cotton used in that shirt may have come from Georgia, may have come from Mississippi, or elsewhere in the world. It may not have come from the United States at all. But the point that I'm making is that I can tell you that when you start to study supply chains and things like that, you find very quickly that it's very difficult for you to sit down and just say, oh, this is a product of this place. You know, to really get the full story of that product, you would need to trace it all the way back to its raw materials. And this is not even to mention all of the auxiliary things that come with products. Where was the packaging made? Where was it designed? Where was the material, the literature for it printed? Where were the constituent parts made? Where are the raw materials from? It's a very complicated discussion, and it's a little bit too much for us to sit down and say that we're somehow not supporting American jobs just because we, buy something based off of the label of manufacture. So that's something that I want everyone to just ponder on a little bit as we're moving into these elections. Now, certainly, in none of these things am I saying that the loss of manufacturing jobs in the United States or any of these things are not worrisome, and that it's not, 100% true that we need to bring as many opportunities to our country as we can. Clearly and obviously, it's better for our society if we have the most diverse country, the most diverse workforce, and the most opportunity possible for all of our people. I'm not trying to sway anyone's opinion of what's going on in the world, and I am not in any way trying to indicate to you that you don't need to look for that Made in America label, because that's something that we can all do to help our country and our democracy be as strong as possible. But I feel like that the most important thing that we can do to kind of aid our democracy is to just think. And to just understand and realize that the people that are trying to get our votes are trying to get our votes. They tell us what we want to hear. They don't necessarily tell us what is entirely the truth. Though I'm sure that, there is truth in everything that all of them say. So the only thing I'm trying to do is just encourage everyone that as you move into this election season, think about things deeply, and don't just take anybody's word for it. The fact is that most issues are very complex and very diverse, and that it falls on all of us to to form our own opinions and to not just be led by this candidate or that candidate. So that about wraps it up for this. I just had these things on my mind that I was thinking about. And to be honest, my YouTube channel is kind of new, and I wanted the opportunity to do one of these sit down discussion videos with you and just see how it kind of goes. So I hope that you enjoyed it. You guys, please like, share. Feel free to comment and subscribe if you like what I'm doing here. And yeah, give me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you. You know, this is my creative outlet, so I'm really enjoying making these videos for you guys, and I'm really hoping that you enjoy watching them. One last thing, guys, if you're American like me, please get out and vote. This election is very important for where our nation will go over the next 4 years, and it is our privilege, but it's also our responsibility to our democracy, and it's our opportunity to try to help to guide the country to where we want it to go. I just encourage you all to sit down, think about everything, think it through really well, pick the candidate that you think is the best one to lead our country into where it needs to be in the next few years. And yeah, let's pick us a good one. So until next time, it's your boy T Bear, and I will talk to you later.